You heard that, huh? All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. And I really apologize that we're starting a half hour, more than a half hour late tonight. Part of the reason is because there was a glitch in the user area, my area. I forgot to send the link. I sent the email that said, here's the link, but I didn't put the link in for our computer guy. And so then we ran into problems with the other things. So, long story short, here we are. A couple of things before I begin again, since I did half of it already, and I've got it down now. I know what I'm going to do, so bear with me. So the first thing is that we did put out the podcast with my interview with Naomi Judd, and it is available online, and you can find it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, the normal places, as well as our Facebook page. And also, I put out a blog today about the interview, and you can check that out at pastorbrad.blog. Now, the next thing I want to do is tell you that next week, starting next Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Central, instead of being here on the Fresh Hope Network, I'm going to be on Facebook. And we're going to do Facebook Live from the Fresh Hope for Mental Health main page on Facebook, as well as the videos will be available on Facebook and also on YouTube. So I will be also on YouTube, I believe at the same time, live, and then you'll be able to watch it on demand on YouTube or also on Facebook. So there you have it. All right, this evening, I want to talk to you about living well. I named the program Living Well, and quite honestly, I never even thought about talking about what does it mean to live well. And I remember when we first started talking about mental health recovery, and there'd be people that would say that had been, quote unquote, living with a mental health challenge for quite a while. They'd say things like, oh, you can't recover from mental health issues. Yeah, that's the wrong word, and yada, yada. But that is the word that SAMHSA uses. And they are the experts, and they use the word recovery, and they define it something like this: that recovery is when you're taking back your life as you had it prior to being sick with a mental illness. So I like that definition. I think it's a matter of taking back our lives. I've likened my bipolar disorder that I have to like living with a monster inside of me. And for a long time, the monster was ruling my life. And sooner or later, it brought me down, so to speak. And then I had to begin to discover who that monster was, that I was not the monster, how to tame that monster, how to get that monster chained up, put away in the basement corner. Yes, I would have to live with the monster the rest of my life, but I would not be ruled by the monster the rest of my life. So, as some of you know, I went to support group meetings early on, and what I did was this was early on after 7 years, I should say, after I relapsed, early after the relapse, I went to some support group meetings. I attended for quite a while. I did two different kinds that were out there at the time by national organizations, and I went, and all people did was talked about what medicines they were on, how horrible it was, how difficult it was, how they weren't doing well. They talked about what doctor, they needed to find a different doctor, they went on disability, or they were taking medicine. What kind of medicine are you taking? Blah, blah, blah. And the side effects of the medicine, you name it. And I would walk away from those meetings more depressed. I wasn't getting better. It was making me worse. And so I quit going, and that's ultimately some time later, then we started Fresh Hope, being the kind of hope filled groups that I needed. More so than anything, I needed to know how to live in spite of having bipolar disorder. I needed to figure out how to hold down my job, how to not be depressed, how to enjoy my family and enjoy life again. I needed to figure that out. I didn't say it this way back then, but what I was really trying to do was trying to figure out how to live life in spite of having my or in spite of having bipolar disorder. And needless to say, it was a challenge figuring that out. It wasn't easy. And there was no one coaching me along the way. There was no one that had been there and done that and telling me, oh, do this or think about it this way or whatever. I was kind of on my own, um, with the help of my wife, and my doctor. There really wasn't much more help that I had. There were some friends maybe here and there, but it was difficult because I felt like, oh no, I'm never going to have the life that I had again. And I got to say today, I have a better life than I had before. But it took a lot of learning how to live well in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. Um, so, what does it mean to live well? Well, I've come up with three phases, if you will, of mental health recovery, and you might have seen this before, and that's okay. You're probably going to be at a different point when you see it this time than you were the last time. You might hear something new or whatever. But here's the three phases or the three different aspects to mental health recovery that I think there are. I'm going to call them surviving, coping, and thriving. Okay. So, in the first phase, when you're surviving, that is after a mental health episode, after it really leaving you in a lurch, if you will, and just really not doing well. Uh, that is just you're surviving. You're probably not showering, you're not taking care of yourself like you should, but you didn't die from the episode. Okay, so you had severe bout with depression. Maybe you were in the hospital, or you had a major manic episode and you didn't land up in jail, or you have anxiety that has been crippling you, or you've had a real schizophrenic break. And now things are starting to normalize. The medicine is starting to stabilize you. And now you've got a choice to make. And that is to get up and live. In fact, that's almost what I called it at the beginning of Fresh Hope. I almost named Fresh Hope Choose to Live. I, I'm glad I didn't. I prefer Fresh Hope, but choose to live. Because for me, that was really, it had to be a conscious decision almost every single day. I got to get up and choose to live. I'm alive. I can't die before I'm dead. I have to live. And so I chose to live. It's surviving. It's not the life you would want. And there's a lot of people who, either because their mental illness is so severe, or they may have not been able to do the things they needed to do early enough on, that it has just gotten to be habitually choosing to live. Just they habitually are surviving. Um, I would like to think that most people get to a point where surviving is not enough, that they at least want to move to the next phase, and that is coping. That Now they're learning to live. If this was the second or third episode, they might be learning, okay, that's the mistake I made, that's what I didn't do right, or whatever. But they're learning to live, and they're coping, you know. Um, they're carrying out the day, they're beginning to take their life back. But then you move into this, what I would call the third phase, and that is where you're thriving. You're living well in spite of any kind of mental health challenge that you might have, or diagnosis, or personality disorder, or anything like that. And it's in these three phases of choosing to live, learning to live, and then living well that I would think that most of us want to learn how to live well in spite of. And in fact, I will tell you this: if you say it is not going to get any better than it is today, this is as good as it's going to get for me, you won't necessarily ever get to the third one. In order to get to that third phase, in order to say, I really want, you have to want it. You have to believe you can achieve more than where you're at today. And you've got to say, I want to live well. But if you say, I can't, you know what? You won't. It's just that simple. It's like a lot of things in life. If you say, oh, I could never do that, or I won't be able to do that, or, that just isn't me, I can't. Well, you won't. And you won't try it either. I've convinced myself that I don't like exercising. I've convinced myself that I absolutely hate to sweat when I'm exercising. Now, I suppose if it was eating at a food championship of some sort, a food sport, and there was sweating involved, I could do that, because I like that, I want that. So I'm pretty sure that I don't like exercise because I decided I don't like it. I just, don't like it. Now, the only kind of exercise that I really don't mind is being in the water, swimming, or even exercising in the water, because then I can't tell that I'm perspiring. It doesn't seem to wear me out as much or whatever. And I know it's good for me. So I've had to kind of say the kind of exercise I really like and want to do is something in the water. And then I can do it. But if I said to myself, well, swimming is just another form of exercise and you don't like exercises, I probably would convince myself I couldn't do it. Do you see what I'm saying? If you don't believe you can live any better or live well in spite of your mental health challenge, you won't live better. You won't live well in spite of it. Now, that does not mean that living well looks the same for all of us. Please note, I am not saying living well means looking like how I'm living, because I think there's people that live well and do well, but I don't look like what they do. There's some people that living well looks like coping for some. For some, coping looks like thriving to others. It has nothing to do with somebody saying, if you do these things, then you're living well. For instance, you could be holding down a job and possibly be just coping. Or you could be on disability and be living well. So, I mean, it has nothing to do with what you might think. It's more about, are you in charge of the mental health issue in such a way that your monster is locked up and isn't running you, but you are in charge of your life again? and that there's joy, and there's fulfillment, and there's issues. And by the way, there's always going to be difficulties. Life is always going to have some major stressors, major issues, but it's really about how we respond to that more times than not. And in living well, it means that I'm able to handle it. So I'm asking you in this session, how are you doing? Are you at that first step of just trying to survive? Maybe newly diagnosed, feeling a lot of struggle, a lot of having to really choose with your will to live, to get up off the couch, out of bed, whatever it is. Are you possibly coping? You're learning ways to push through. You're learning ways, but it's still not that you have more days that are struggles than are joys. But in thriving, you have so many days that are joys and fewer that are struggles that it's almost hard to remember the struggle days. I still have struggles. I think I'm living well, but there's still times where I kind of have to go back to step one and say, okay, Brad, today you need to choose to live. I've since Christmas time, I've gotten myself into some bad habits that I've been telling myself, okay, you got to get yourself out of these habits. You got to do this different, that different. And because it's not helping me to thrive. And by the way, you can be doing thriving on one day and the next day you're not. You could be thriving in certain areas and coping in others and barely surviving in other parts of your life or even within your recovery. But I'd like you to take kind of an inventory of where you think you're at. And the good thing is that you can proceed, you can grow into, and then I want to tell you, you can live well in spite of having a mental health diagnosis and live that way for a long time. I've been living 18, 19 years now since my last episode with some minor bouts of a little anxiety here and there and some mild depression, but nothing that's stopped me from working or put me in the hospital or even would be considered clinical depression. So I would like you to take this chance and really evaluate that. And if you're looking for the handout and you don't have a copy of it, email me at Pastor Brad at freshhope.us or email Maria at freshhope.us, and we'll get you a copy of these 3 phases of recovery. Now, don't forget, next week we will be on Facebook, 7 p.m. Central Time on Facebook on the Fresh Hope for Mental Health page. I'll be looking for you there. On Sunday mornings, we'll also be on the Fresh Hope for Mental Health page with the Anchor of Hope messages at 10 o'clock or 10:30 on Sunday mornings. This last Sunday morning, I goofed up again. I forgot to press the go live button. You have to do that. You can't have it just set up and intend to do it. You have to press it. And I forgot to. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Okay. God bless you until then. Bye.